Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Gurrs, and Purrs. My name is Leslie, and today we're going to be discussing Woman of Light. I just finished reading it. I absolutely love this book. Where do I start? This book is a Western epic tale. It's fiction, and it spans 5 generations. The story mostly focuses in on one particular protagonist, which is Luce. We meet her character when she's about 17 years of age, and her and her brother work at, I know what you call it, like a, not like a circus. And so her brother is a snake charmer, and Diego is a snake charmer, and Luce is a tea leaf reader. And we just follow her along. It's a bit of a coming of age story for her, as the book starts out when she's 17, and then so it's like you're with her for a year of her life, because then she becomes 18 at some point, and you explore the decisions she makes as she's growing into adulthood and suddenly having to make these, adult decisions about her life and what she wants to do with her life. And through her character, she receives premonitions, visions at some point that really relate to her family, and she can't quite tell if it's the past or the future. But us as readers, we kind of get an idea of what those moments mean, even before Luce realizes it, which I thought was a really beautiful touch. Now, as I mentioned, this book explores 5 generations, and so the first one is her, not grandparent, but great-grandmother, who is Desiree Lopez, the Sleepy Prophet. And this character finds her grandpa, Pedro Lopez, when he's a baby. He's abandoned, and she takes him in as her own. And so we kind of see Pedro grow up, have his own life, and as the story unravels for Luce, we also see the past unravel and see what the other previous generations went through, just so that Diego and Luce have a chance at the life that they have. The story does span from around the 1890s to the 1930s, so we're really seeing the effects of the Great Depression. Something that I really loved that the author did in going back and telling a tale that's focused on Mexican indigenous women, is that although the author is telling a tale that we don't often see in literature, or we don't see certain people represented in this story, or even historical documents, or I would say how those time periods are really taught to people in school. What I appreciate the author does is just her ability to tell a tale, but she doesn't create exclusion of other people. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are times when I've read other books, whether fiction or nonfiction, where an author will write a book and the whole intent is to say, well, all right, this particular culture has not been represented, but then they boil down the whole story to only that one culture, and then they kind of maybe unintentionally create this exclusion, right, of other people in the narrative. And I felt like what the author did so well is that there's this inclusion of so many different people from so many different backgrounds, and I feel like that's more reflective of who people are and their experiences. The characters live at a time where there's French, there's Spanish, Filipino, Korean. There's all these people that are traveling to settle in what was once like Mexico and now becomes a part of the States. And so I don't know, I just really appreciated that the author caught that in a way that I don't think I've ever seen done in a book. And I really, really love that. All right, before I go into like any type of spoiler chat, I'll just say that really briefly, the story focuses in on Luz and her brother Diego. Diego gets involved with a young lady named Eleanor, who is a white woman. And because of that, her brother is brutally, brutally beaten. So badly that as soon as he recovers, he has to flee. And Luz is very young. She doesn't completely understand what's going on or why her brother can't be with her. But it's around this time that she starts pursuing a professional life for herself as she's figuring herself out. On top of that, she also is an eyewitness as well as experiences racism and unjust acts. And so there's a lot that's specific to her story that she's confronted with. And I absolutely love the characters because although this is a beautiful book with beautiful prose, all the characters are just so human and messy and make decisions that you might even not like. But that's what I like about this story. It just feels like so real. I feel like if the protagonist or any of the other characters were remotely perfect, I'm sorry, that's my cat, or doing anything that I wanted, I would feel like that'd be unjust to the story. And so I'm just gonna leave the non-spoiler section with just one particular quote that I really loved. That's a great example of the author switching from like prose to like a lyrical image. That was really, really beautiful. And it's on page 160, and this is just one sentence from the first page, and in fact it's the first sentence. And the author writes, "The city was changing from the bleak winter into new life, struggling to be born." And so I just love that sentence because the author could just easily say, it's a new season, and then say what that season is. But she decides to say that in a really beautiful way, that it's just at the beginning, right, of the seasons changing. And the author does that throughout the book, and I really love that. All right, everyone, I'm going to keep my spoiler chat portion kind of short. My cat rules this home. My cat Tariel's being really like attention grabbing, and so I don't know, I'm gonna have to cut this short or she's just gonna meow the whole time. Alright, so I think I just wanted to focus in on some things that Luz goes through that I know I can't talk about in a non-spoilery way, because then I'll just ruin it for someone. So here goes. There are just certain things that the author says through the character of Luz that I thought was very powerful. The story does explore sexism, racism, discrimination, police brutality, and also identity in a way that I really appreciated. I appreciate that the characters are mixed heritage, and that kind of breaks the idea that anyone is like only one thing, right? And I really love that. And I'm just gonna go and focus on like some of the sexist things that Luz faces, and I like the idea that the author did things that aren't necessarily nefarious, but still hurt a woman or show like what a woman had to go through in society. For instance, this is just regarding a conversation that Luz is having with her brother, and on page 33 the author writes, "Sometimes men were like that, treating a girl's voice as if it had slipped from her mouth and fallen directly into a pit." So really what all she's referring to is Diego just brushing off whatever Luz has to say, just blatantly ignoring her. And I thought that was important because actually this is just an example of a cycle that's going on. And later on in the book, Luz works for David, who is a lawyer, and I really liked that the author gave an example of a compliment that's also an insult. For instance, David sees just how smart Luz is. Luz has a chance financially to attend a couple of college courses, and so those skills that she gains pays off at her new job as an assistant to a lawyer. But David the lawyer basically says that it's a shame that other women aren't, like, let's say, as ambitious to be as smart as Luz. But that's not just true. I mean, they exist in a time where women don't have those kind of opportunities. It's either you get married or you don't, and you're going to make your life really hard financially. And so internally, Luz recognizes this. And it's also really insulting that the blame then gets put on women, that it's the women's fault that they don't want to learn. And also, there's also this, I almost feel like it's a classist response as well, because David only sees the skills that Luz is acquiring as being skills. But Luz knows that she has her best friend Lizette, and she has skills, and that her aunt has skills, and they may not be the ones that appeal to David, but they're still skills. And so I really enjoyed that conversation that the author was including. The story goes on to talk about this case of brutality and excessive force by the police. And so as Luz is learning about this, and as David is challenging a case and actually is defending the person that was brutalized, there's a clan march that takes place, and it's a very scary situation. And Luz observes something, and I think it really speaks to how all these terrible things get passed down generationally. And so in the march, Luz observes there was a section of women, their white faces rosy in the chilly afternoon, their small children, some no more than 3 or 4 years old, pulled along in red wagons. How could they bring their babies? So I just thought that was really telling that children that were just so young would be brought along to have like this parent dynamic and racism like reinforced. And it's saying a lot. I don't think I could really wrap my head around that, but I do appreciate the inclusion of that. And kind of going along that conversation and also speaking to inclusion, you know, the characters do come across a sign, and it's excluding people except for like white people. Like it's like a designated area for people to play, and the sign will clearly say like no Koreans, no black people, no Mexicans, all derogatory terms, by the way, that I'm not going to repeat. But it's that attention to detail where the author does not decide to just focus on like one particular group to drive home like a specific narrative of a certain community. She's including everyone that's been excluded, and been oppressed, and I feel like that's really comes down to like why I have so much appreciation and love for this particular book. And I can't wait to watch interviews with the author and see what kind of research they did to tell this story. Something else that I liked is that there is a part of the land, my cat, I gotta wrap this up, that where the conversation is around the Lost Territories, and Colorado, and I don't want to mention too many other locations, but I'll just say that whenever the author is referring to like the Lost Territories, I'm not quite sure where that's at, because at this time there was so much I don't know how to say it, like turnover, like, you know, there's land that was once indigenous and then Spain took it over, and then the States took it over time, like, so I think the Lost Territories is like a representation of all this shifting like ownership of land. And I thought that was like also an incredible detail to kind of bring up me as a reader. I think it's kind of like inherently I want to know where that's at, and the author doesn't exactly give me like the answers, but like in a good way. I'll end here because my cat's gonna start meowing at me again. I'll just say that I can't help, I want to spill the beans about the decision that Luce makes at the end. Luce is a character that's trying to navigate the fact that she lives in a time where she feels pressure to get married, even at a young age, because she wants to secure herself financially. But she's like grappling with making that decision and potentially marrying someone she doesn't really feel invested or that she loves. And then also this other part of her that just wants to have a passionate exchange with someone. And so in doing so, in not really knowing what she wants, she makes like a grave error. She totally fools around with one person as an engaged to the other, and gets caught. And there's something about that when I read it, it was so shocking. I wasn't expecting that. But it didn't necessarily feel outlined with the character, because they're like kind of in a mixed, confused part of their life. And I just was not expecting like this juicy moment to happen in this book amongst all these other conversations that the author is having. And you know what? I was here for it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And but I don't know anyone else who has read that book, but it felt like all these things that this character is going through like culminated in this grave error. Anyways, I'll just say that there's so many other great, beautiful moments that happen in this book that I'm not going to talk about because I don't want to make this super duper long, but let me know what you think. I definitely would like to discuss those juicy moments with someone if you've read this. Let me know what characters you love the most. Oh, I don't want to make this too long, but I really loved the aunt character. And lastly, I wanted to pay a compliment to the person that read the audiobook or created the audiobook. Her name is Melina Babadia, I think is her last name. I'm sorry if I'm messing that up. She did such a great job reading the audiobook that I think it might be my favorite audiobook to date. The way that the Melina created characters through their voice. I mean, she did such an incredible job. That's like one of the things I'm nitpicky about, is that sometimes when I hear audiobooks, I feel like the only change in character is the pitch of the voice, and it will take me out of the audiobook. But I mean, she really created these characters and they just like gave more life to the story, and I really love that. Anyways, I'll close it here. Let me know what you think below, and I'll talk to you later.